Hey, welcome to Truly Movies. Today I will be recapping you on the first season of the psychological thriller on Netflix TV show You. Before we start, hit that like and subscribe button. And turn on notifications for our channel. Please sit back and enjoy. Forewarning, there are spoilers ahead. Bookstore manager Joe Goldberg meets aspiring writer Guinevere Beck. They have a slightly flirtatious encounter, which denotes the beginning of Joe's unfortunate fixation for her, and a web search about her prompts Joe filling Beck around, checking her social connections, also, keeping an eye on her from across the road, where he before long finds her love interest Benji. A trust fund youngster and womanizer, she hooks up with. Joe slips into her loft while she is out and feels her underwear. What's more, follows her into a bar where she meets her companions, Lynn, Annika, and Peach. Joe is close by when an inebriated Beck falls onto the subway tracks, and he saves her. Joe brings Beck back home yet takes her telephone, giving him full admittance to all that she does with her new telephone because of it consequently synchronizing with her old one. Beck later comes by the bookshop to say thanks to him for safeguarding her. He asks her out. Joe draws Beck's philandering boyfriend Benji to the cellar of his shop, hits him in the head with a hammer, and secures him in a plexiglass book vault. In a flashback, a youthful Joe is secured in a book vault as disciplined by Mooney, a mentor in his life and the proprietor of the bookstore. Mooney would possibly deliver him in the event that he has showed regret for his activities. In the present, Joe concludes Benji should be punished, so he gives him an espresso bound with peanut oil, and Benji kicks the bucket from an unfavorably allergic reaction. While Benji is gone, Joe duplicates down on his endeavors to persuade Beck that he is the one for her, yet he stays in the friend zone. In the meanwhile, Beck's thesis advisor Professor Leahy makes passes at her. Beck rejects him. He takes steps to remove her teaching ONC job and subsequently, her housing. She reverses the situation on Professor Leahy by taking steps to uncover his inappropriate behavior of her and 6 other ladies. In trade for her silence, he assigned her to another consultant. Beck is grateful for Joe's help and kisses him. Interestingly, their relationship turns out to be more serious, however Beck is still sleeping around with other men. Joe is still up in the air to propel their relationship and has a heartful discussion with Beck, when she tells him her late dad, who overdosed on drugs. They began to get personal, however is inconsiderately hindered by Peach, Beck's rich and entitled best friend. She requests Beck to take her to the emergency clinic to be treated for illness. At the emergency clinic, Peach expresses strong disapproval of Joe, that he is excessively poor to help Beck. She disagrees, then leaves. In a little while, Joe shows Beck his assortment of rare books in the cellar vault. He makes sense of that. He imparts an association with books he can't find elsewhere. Joe's passionate speech wins upon Beck. She welcomed him over to her play where they at long last engage in sexual relations. Tragically, Joe gets excessively energized and wraps up in 8 seconds. Next morning, Beck messages all her friends about the disheartening sex which Joe sees by means of her old telephone. She has also made end-of-the-week arrangements with somebody called the Captain. A desirous Joe follows her to a Charles Dickens festival, thus learns the man she is meeting is her probably dead dad Edward. Joe figures out that he defeated his illicit drug use and began another existence with another spouse. Beck learns from Peach that Joe is likewise at the festival, which drives him to uncover himself to Beck, making sense of he's there for shock her. They go to lunch with Edward and his new family, yet mid-lunch Beck detonates at her excessively basic stepmother and tempest off. Beck clears up for Joe. She feels deserted by her dad, who has become something else entirely with another family. Beck accepts Joe's recommendation and channels her sentiments about her dad into her writing, which gets shining reviews from her colleagues. Beck visits Joe at his loft and they have intercourse once more, this time a lot satisfaction to Beck. In the wake of turning into a couple, Joe begins joining Beck and her companions for ladies' night, where he most of the time conflicts with Peach. Acknowledging Beck is searching for composing offers, Peach acquaints her with Roger, a famous literary agent. Unfortunately, neither of them has the goal of aiding Beck, and this is only a ploy to inspire her to stop her alumni program. Beck figures out reality from Roger and faces Peach for undermining her vocation, finishing their friendship. Desperate, Peach fakes a suicide attempt to recapture Beck's adoration and takes her direction from Joe. He sees the Peach's falsehoods and finds she has been furtively infatuated with Beck since college. To save their relationship, Joe subtly follows Peach on her morning run and hits her over the head with a stone. The arrangement misfires when she survives the assault and gets more attention from Beck. Back at Joe's loft, he is neighbors to a single-parent Claudia and her child Paco. Claudia's boyfriend Ron physically abuses her. To safeguard his mom, Paco drugs Ron with sleeping pills, practically killing him. Joe effectively restores Ron, who pounds the life out of him half bitterly. Claudia breaks up with Ron and is thankful to Joe for his assistance. Sometime later, Peach goes on a short trip with Beck to the Salinger family estate in Greenwich. Unbeknown to Beck, Joe has subtly followed her to the home and spies on her while concealing in the house. Peach welcomes Raj, Beck's old buddy, over. They all ingest pills, and Peach endeavors to start a trio. Notwithstanding, Beck turns down her advances and leaves the room. Next morning, Beck confronts Peach about having feelings for her, to which she denies. Beck turns down her proposal to travel to Paris with her since she isn't willing to abandon Joe and her life in New York. She Ubers home, leaving Peach crushed. Not long after Peach finds out, Joe has broken into the house and threatens to use a weapon on him. Joe takes steps to send her reserve of exposed Beck photographs to her companions, assuming that she harms him. While Peach is diverted, Joe makes a run for it, yet Hal gets shot. Peach dies from the altercation, and Joe masks her passing as a suicide. Beck and Joe's relationship improves without Peach's impedance. Be that as it may, this doesn't stand the test of time. Also, Beck turns out to be progressively far off and cryptic, concealing messages on her telephone. Joe finds that Beck, to adapt to Peach's demise, has been making incessant visits to a therapist, Dr. Nikki, and suspects she has been laying down with him to validate his intuitions. Joe follows Beck on one of her arrangements, yet gets discovered in the act. Beck parts ways with him for double-crossing her trust. Joe is heartbroken. He breaks into Dr. Nikki's office and pays attention to one of Beck's treatment meetings on his PC. Joe understands that Beck isn't taking part in an extramarital entanglements with Dr. Nikki and simply needs time alone to deal with herself. In the wake of saying sorry, Joe lets her go. 90 days has passed. Joe is presently in another relationship with Karen, Claudia's friend, and Beck's article about Peach's passing has handled her a book deal. After a run-in at a food truck, Beck starts to miss Joe and texts him. They begin flirting with one another over text. Joe gets back to find Claudia, passed out from taking drugs, and Karen is helping her. He carries Claudia to the plexiglass vault at his bookstore, where she can overcome her illicit drug use and disconnection while Karen is busy with Claudia. Joe and Beck covertly meet and have intercourse, reviving the energy of their past relationship. A weepy Beck owns up to Joe that she presently knows how great he was for her. Joe says a final farewell to Karen and reunites with Beck. In the interim, Claudia has effectively successfully overcame her addiction, however reunites with Ron, her abusive ex. Paco faults Joe for Ron's return. One evening, Joe shocked conscious by a bad dream about Candace, his ex, and yells out her name. In a flashback, Candace goes behind his back with Elijah, her agent, during a showdown with Elijah. Joe impulsively pushes him to his demise from a building. A terrified Joe goes to Mooney for counsel, who lets him know that certain individuals have the right to pass on. Subsequent to hearing Candace's name that May, Beck starts her own examination concerning what occurred between them, thinking Joe could have killed her, when her endeavors lead to an impasse. Beck stands up to Joe. He shows Beck her new Instagram account enrolled under an alternate name, lightening any doubt Beck could have had. Afterward, Joe finds that Beck has been having an illicit relationship with Dr. Nikki for quite a long time and has been gaslighting him the whole time. She tells him he's the main man she has at any point adored. Thrilled that his adoration is responded, he forgives her. Tragically, the most awful isn't finished. As Beck has found his mystery box in the restroom roof, which contains individual things from his victims, Peach and Benji. Beck is astonished and attempts to get away. Joe acknowledges she has found his most darkest secret and secures her in his book vault. Joe confesses about the homicide of Benji and Peach and makes sense of that he just killed them in light of his affection for her. Beck separates crying and is scared of Joe for what he has done. Joe places a typewriter in the vault and urges Beck to compose, trusting it would help her benefit an alternate point of view. In the meantime, Claudia winds up in the medical clinic after Ron's maltreatment. Paco, I'm a fur of fury, hits Ron with a bat. He pursues Paco, yet is intruded on by Joe, who kill him to safeguard Paco. Subsequent to disposing of his body, Joe gets back to the vault to find out. Beck has reviewed a story outlining Dr. Nikki for Joe's crimes, as an exit plan for the two of them. Persuaded that she has had a shift in perspective, Joe enters the vault and kisses her. Beck cuts him and secures him in, uncovering that it was all a demonstration to get away from the vault. Unbeknown to Beck, Joe has stowed away a key inside the vault, liberates himself and kills her before she could get away from the cellar. Months after the fact, Beck's story, which made #1 New York Times bestseller, was utilized to approach Dr. Nikki for her murder. With Ron out of the picture, Claudia and Pasp are moving to California for a new beginning. As Joe is mourning the death of Beck, a lady strolls in the bookstore and grabs his eye. Joe encounters the secret lady who is uncovered to be Candace.
I think we have some unfinished business to talk about.
Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe to more videos and comments below what other movie you would like to see. Thank you.